Dr. Dave Rabin, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Great. It's so good to see you.
Mazel tov on your first book, brother. A Simple Guide to Being Alive. And it's a beautiful cover. We were talking before we got started rolling on the sort of biblical undertones of the cover. What were you trying to achieve with the cover design?
So the cover is a modern 21st century Adam and Eve locked outside the Garden of Eden with many different ways to get in, and a lock that is breathing and a key that is clearly there, but we're missing it. And it really comes from, I think, this concept that I learned, that I know many of us learned growing up, about this creation story and how we got kicked out of the Garden of Eden because we disobeyed God. And that was a core lesson, at least, that I learned from that story and was taught. I think most of us learned a similar story, generally speaking. And that just never really seemed like the whole story to me. And so over the years, as I was, studying neuroscience and psychology and mental health, trauma, PTSD, psychedelics, these kind of biblical spiritual overtones kept coming through, and these themes that reminded me back of that story. And so that story is woven throughout the book. And I think as almost like the Bible, thinking of the Bible like a puzzle rather than something that we're supposed to interpret word for word. It's like a puzzle, and we're supposed to figure out how to put the pieces together to extract the most meaning so that we can understand how to live good, healthy, happy, long lives, right? Like that's kind of the purpose of that book, right? And when you think about it from why else would it exist for so long?
Of course, yeah. I just want to know how many psychedelics you had to do to arrive at this idea.
Well, the short answer is not many, because it was really, I don't think you have to do any psychedelics really to get here. If you just ask the right questions. And I know Elon Musk was talking about this recently, about how important it is to ask the right questions. And I think that is something that most of us just aren't taught. For me, these concepts came out in elementary school and high school. Like, There were no psychedelics involved. And then college and my neuroscience PhD even more so, because as I learned about the brain, I also remembered this phrase, as above, so below. And as I'm thinking about how the brain works and how neural networks connect, and staring at them under a microscope day after day, you start to naturally make the connection, oh, wait, this is how trees look when you stare up at them in the forest, right? This is how roots look underneath the ground and how they talk to each other through mycelial networks, right? And it's all reflective in the body as above in nature. And so you naturally start to think, well, maybe there's some truth to this that we are not effectively passing down to people. And through lived experience of myself, I was very fortunate to grow up in a household where curiosity was encouraged. And even if you asked dumb questions, curiosity was encouraged. And so I really am grateful to my parents for that, because I think that helped spur me along the way in that inquiry.
No, it's amazing. You've always been an incredibly forward thinker, and I've been a long time admirer of your work. But so let's get into the topic of the book. You argue that anxiety isn't the enemy; it's a signal. It's a form of information. So for somebody who feels overstimulated, burnt out, what would you say is the message that they should be trying to derive from their anxiety? What is the signal trying to actually tell them?
So this is something that we commonly misteach in education. It stems from early education, when we first tell people about what anxiety is and how we learn about it, however we learn about it, which is something that generally we should avoid or is unpleasant, uncomfortable, to the way we teach about it in psychiatry, which is that it's a disorder, right? And it's really neither of those things. It's just a neutral signal that's coming in that says, evolutionarily, hey, you're supposed to pay attention to something. That's what we evolved anxiety for. So it's a critical survival signal. It's always going to be there. It's never going away. And it's not supposed to go away, because if it goes away, we're susceptible to death. So our amygdala is hardwired to send a signal of restlessness, or physical restlessness is like the body's manifestation of anxiety in the mind, and they're connected. And so the amygdala sends a signal to signal restlessness or anxiety, especially in times where there's too much unfamiliarity, too much newness, too much too fast, too loud, right? Like just overstimulating environments, too much blue light, right? The amygdala starts to fire off. And that basically turns on the entire fight or flight system. And so the body gets into this hyper-inflammatory state. So we can self-regulate that. And anxiety, when we understand it's a signal, just wants to be felt. Feelings want to be felt. Feelings also, like anxiety, like sadness and anger and other feelings, are not bad or good. They are literally just signals to be felt. It only takes 60 to 120 seconds to feel a feeling like anxiety. And then that just means even closing your eyes or not, just breathing into the feeling of that restlessness or discomfort and just feeling it without doing anything else. We just skip over that step because we go so quickly into thinking and judging it most of the time. And then we're like, oh, I shouldn't feel that. That's bad. That suppression of anxiety, as the Buddhists say, which we now also understand in psychology, is one of the fastest paths to suffering. And anxiety might cause pain, but pain, when you feel it, only lasts in the emotional sense 60 to 120 seconds. Then you feel it, you get the message that it's trying to send, which is, hey, you need to cry, you need to run, you need to, go do some creative pursuit, like create music or art or get this out, right? The signal is always, this is how you move this energy, this emotion, energy, anxiety stored in the body out. It needs to be moved. Emotion is energy, emotion, right? So that's kind of one of the simple concepts that when we really break it down, it's just slowing down and really dilating time, which is something we learned that psychedelics help with, to create space between the thing you're experiencing, feeling it, and then thinking about it, not just experiencing the thing and then thinking about it and then maybe feeling it later when you feel like it maybe deserves to be felt. That suppresses it, and then it just keeps knocking, being like, hey, I'm here, right? And it just gets louder and louder and louder.
Why does it feel as though some people are more sensitive than others?
Well, sensitive to what specifically?
Stressful stimuli.
So stress tolerance and distress tolerance specifically, but stress tolerance as a whole, or resilience, is a skill that we are supposed to be learning from a very young age. And it starts with learning how to self-soothe when you're angry and you're 2 years old or 1 year old, right? And your mom or dad has given you everything you want. You're overtired, and sometimes you need, it's okay to have that infant or 2-year-old especially spend a couple minutes alone to self-soothe and try to figure it out. And then if maybe 5 or 10 minutes go by and they can't figure it out, you come back in and you give them some support, right? But the point is that kind of parenting is really important. Teaching kids to breathe through discomfort. Starting at the age of 2 years old, you can teach kids how to breathe by choice and sit with emotions that are hard, like loss, right? Like when they lose a toy, or they, something they can't have, or that they can't have. And then it's like, okay, let's breathe through this. And we can teach them how to do that by doing it with them. And so that's that helps train stress tolerance. And then exposure to stress also helps train stress tolerance, which is like hormesis. You talk about this quite a bit, right? And this idea that we need to be exposed to some stress to grow, and stress is normal. So we better get used to it and learn the adaptation skills and prioritize those skills so that we can get better at overcoming stress more quickly and learning from it faster without so many of the deleterious effects, right? Because too much stress causes too much inflammation, fight or flight, all the things.
Yeah, it's no bueno. It's a U-shaped curve. I mean, some stress is good. It compels the system to adapt and to become more resilient, but too much stress and you've got overload, and that's when it leaves you vulnerable to infection. You're not recovering at your best. So it's not necessarily that some people are hardwired to better withstand modern stressors. It's just that they were perhaps raised in a way that has better equipped them with the tools of self-soothing.
I think that's the majority of it, and then there is some percentage that is accounted for by epigenetic trauma, which is passed down, and epigenetic resilience that is passed down. So when we have what is now known about inherited traits in biology, which is really interesting, is that it's not most of the things we think about as like stress tolerance and metabolism are not so much genetic as they are epigenetic. And epigenetic is the layer of code that sits on the DNA that tells which parts of the DNA to turn up or down depending on the function of the cell.
So you can't change your genes, but you can change the way that your genes essentially express themselves.
Exactly.
And that's epigenetics.
Exactly. And that's how the single DNA code that is in me, that's 99.9% the same in you, codes for every single of the 200 different plus cell types in our bodies.
And what does the switchboard look like? Is that just the environment?
In the cell or the switchboard as a whole? Because in the cell, so in the cell, it's just molecules being placed on or off the DNA code that say, hey, turn this up or turn this down or turn this off completely or leave this on for X amount of time, right? It just has these different, it's like notation on a musical score.
That's so cool.
So that is shifting in real time with the environment. And when we experience, and this is what I talk about a lot in the book, because I think, we now know how memories are formed and how memories around trauma are formed and how we can extinguish traumatic memories with safety relearning. With and without psychedelics, we understand the mechanism. And it's never properly been taught. And we've even in advanced medical training, and we've even awarded a Nobel Prize to Eric Kandel for discovering this, in large part in 2000. So it's widely acknowledged that when we form memories around fear and safety, that those get stored in stronger loops and in the brain in terms of wiring. And it's not just wiring of the thing that happened to you, it's everything about that situation in which the thing and associated with that thing that happened to you. And so by understanding that when we have hardship or traumatic experiences that change the way we see ourselves from like agents of our own destiny to victims of circumstance, that is a meaningful experience that then gets encoded on the epigenetic code, like on cortisol receptors. And then it gets passed down across generations. So 3 or more generations, which is really fascinating. So basically, we now know that the markings, what are the markings of transgenerational inheritance of trauma, which is super freaking cool, right? We never knew that before. And on top of that, we know how to repair those markers with things like MDMA-assisted therapy that start to actually change the epigenetic markings back closer to normal to a pre-trauma state.
Wow.
Within just 3 doses in 12 weeks, just like kind of like a psychosurgery, right? Like it's like we're going in and we're helping them remodel and remake meaning around past traumatic events from the perspective of safety. And we extinguish the fear, just like B.F. Skinner did in his rats, but in humans actually healing trauma, right?
That's amazing. So those early epigenetic marks are not permanent. They're not set in stone.
Well, certain ones are, like your cell type. Those are set in stone for the most part. We don't want those to change. Like you don't want your skin cell to all of a sudden start becoming like a hair cell or a liver cell, right? You want your skin cell that's a skin cell to keep being what it is. And so that's epigenetically regulated on a tighter basis. Part of what happens when people get things like a teratoma is there's changes to those genes those genes of cell type that we don't want to change. Then there's other epigenetic markers that are dynamic. And that's probably most of them. I mean, this is the extent to which this field has been explored, I should say, is we are early in the understanding of how stress and trauma and reward and healing shift epigenetic changes on the whole, because there's like billions of combinations. So we're just starting to understand. But it's really cool because we now know how we learn. And we now know that safety, not just conceptual safety, but like physiological safety, is a essential, not optional, but essential prerequisite for people to learn properly to the goal of understanding, not just memorization, but actually understanding and learning things for the long haul. And for memory to succeed, we have to have safety as a prerequisite, because that is how the nervous system gets into a vagal pro-learning state where safety is prioritized and not fight or flight.
Well, why do so many people today feel unsafe, despite the fact that we're living in a world that's objectively more comfortable than ever before?
It's a great question, right? This is one of the main questions that drove me to write this, because I'm like, we are living in the age of convenience. This is easily the most comfortable humans have been ever in the history of humankind. And yet, right, more people are still struggling now than ever. And the way I think about it is that the society that we have created has rapidly outpaced our ability to cope with it, especially in the form of our interaction with technology, which is part of the reason why people are not, I argue, not learning as well, is because, think about how much input you're getting informationally and digitally from a screen, like in a half an hour of using a screen first thing in the morning. And not that you do this, but many people do.
I do it.
Yeah.
Look at my phone like as soon as my eyes open.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely do it sometimes. I try not to, because I am well aware that I'm putting in as much information in that first half hour into my brain as the average human being took in a week of being alive in the 1950s. It's a huge amount of social informational input. Our brains were not meant to cope with that concentration of information or input in a half hour, let alone multiply that times how many screen hours we have for the day, right? Now you're talking about weeks of information that are condensed into a day of being alive. And yet our information rate of input, which is overwhelming our body and our amygdala constantly, sending passive, what I call ambient terror, right? It's just passive fear response that is getting sent out to our amygdalas that are all unanimously detecting there's uncertainty, there's too much, there's too fast, too loud, I can't keep up. Better just numb or distract myself from it because there's too much. And we just shut down or go off in some alternate direction. And that's why, in large part, especially due to the lack of social connection that got even worse with COVID, which was a major grounding thing for us as a community. We now are witnessing mental illness growth that's even more significant, right? Like, our techniques are not working. And I think it's promising the executive branch is finally starting to acknowledge that.
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, I've said this a couple of times recently on the podcast in prior episodes, but it's like, you can, even when doing your best to avoid the rage bait and the headlines and the clickbait, like, it finds you now with push notifications. It's just crazy. I mean, like, take Amber Alerts. Like, these are objectively probably a great thing for society that we have the technology to be able to receive them, right? But
sure.
I'll be sitting on my couch and my phone starts vibrating. Like, you'd think that somebody in my personal life was being like stabbed.
Right, like aggressively vibrating.
Aggressively, yeah. It's like crazy. And the algorithm, of course, like, yeah, on the one hand, it, like, people love to say that it just caters to what it is that you like, but it tends to exploit our negativity bias. Like, what tends to generate the most traction on social media tends to be quite negative, quite contrarian. And so it's like, even when doing your best to avoid the feeling of unsafety, like, it's gonna find you. It has a way of finding you today.
Well, I agree with you, generally speaking. Like, wherever we go, right, it's going to be there, because that's the way that our entire society is currently being built. And because we're building it, it's going to happen. Like, that's the direction things are going. At the same time, we have certain tools that are some core basic tools that we haven't really been trained to use properly. And I think, like, one of them is attention control as a basic tool. Like, just starting to rethink the way we teach about focus and concentration. We just put kids in school and expect them to concentrate, but we don't teach them how to do it. Did they teach you how to do it?
No, I was terrible at it.
Me too. It took me so long to learn how to concentrate on stuff that was not immediately actively engaging, right? And then, of course, we get labeled as having, like, attention deficit or something like that. And that's silly because what we actually have is a habitat crisis where we're teaching people to learn in ways that are not tailored to how human brains learn. And so attention needs to be taught like it's a muscle. It's just a muscle that lives in our heads. Mindfulness is the bicep curls of training attention as a muscle and bodybuilding your attention control. Your attention is your gateway to your entire consciousness. Whatever we choose to pay attention to is what is allowed in, right? So simply by putting your phone on do not disturb, you have made the executive choice to say, I'm not going to let you have control over my attention phone. I'm going to choose when I look at you, right? Just that simple button has a very important purpose in terms of how we relate to the technology. I never, to some people's dismay, I never have my phone off of do not disturb because I do not like it to command my attention. I don't feel good. It makes me stressed out. I feel it. I feel the negative effects of that instantly.
Yeah,
so I just use it very intentionally.
No, I have many friends when like midday I'll go to text them and you get that purple notification at the bottom of the text thread that's like they have their notifications set to off, and I'm like, good for you.
Yeah, right.
You know, my phone is perennially on silent, and I generally I turn off notifications from most apps. But like email and text and stuff, I still get notifications.
Yeah.
For.
Yeah. So that's like one simple thing, right? Do not disturb, combined with attention control techniques, combined with questioning your thoughts, right? Like if we understand and remember this ancient principle of meditation that is now proven by neuroscience, which is that we are not our thoughts. We are the observers of our thoughts, right? Did you get taught that in school at all? Right? Like that's kind of important. Instead, we have raised entire generations of people, adults now, who are still identifying with their thoughts rather than witnessing them as they were meant to be witnessed. Like you don't go into the subway station and ride every single train to the end of the line. You wait for your train that you intended to ride, and then you ride it to the place you intended to go, and then you get there. Your thoughts are no different, right? So it's like these kinds of things are the things that are really simple techniques and tools combined with like very simple breathing techniques you can take anywhere you go that help to reshape the way we think about what we're capable of as human beings and why we were here. And I've argued that it's much, much more. We're capable of much, much more than we have an idea of at this point.
And have these tools helped you personally?
Oh yeah, life-changing. I mean, because I tell that story in the book of how I came to all these conclusions through lived experience. But basically, you know, working as a psychiatrist in medical training is hard. Like I was in 12 years of post-college school to learn to do what I do. And, you know, we're working like 24-hour shifts, night shifts, a lot of 18-hour shifts, you know, and just like seeing very, very challenging patients, like some of arguably the most challenging patients because in many cases we didn't have much we could do for them. And they're very, very sick with emotional mental hardship, you know, that was heart-wrenching. And you take on a lot of that. You know, I think we don't talk about that enough as therapists because we're like, oh, we're supposed to be so tough and resilient. We're just gonna take on all this horrible stuff that every patient tells us every time they walk in and just have a bagel and espresso and get right back to it, right? And that's just kind of like what we're taught to do is you just like don't attach. But there's always a little bit that sticks around. And you have to get good. It takes practice to not attach to other people's energy. And so for me, as I started to realize what was not working for my patients, I went to 12 years of post-college training to treat these people, and then less than 30% are getting better long-term. So like basically treatment non-response is the status quo at this point for depression, anxiety, and particularly PTSD. And I just started looking outside the box, and I'm like, with my neuroscience research hat on, I'm gonna like see what psychedelic-assisted therapy has to offer, because I started reading papers into that, and they were successfully treating patients like with MDMA that were my patient population that were not getting better. They saw the flip of the results with like 50 to 70% response improvement remission rates. And that was really exciting. And then through studying and working with psychedelic-assisted therapy and training how to do it, I learned the connection to indigenous communities and the many thousands of year-old lineage heritage of indigenous uses of plant medicines that date long back before us, and also are often used to treat trauma. So I was like, oh, they're treating trauma, we're treating trauma. We need to go learn from these people. These people are like the masters of these using psychedelic tools. So I led a research trip down to Peru, to Iquitos, to study with the Shipibo people in 2017 with Joe Tafur and Dr. Ben Kalmendi from Yale. And we kicked off the MDMA trial with MAPS afterwards.
Oh, amazing.
And ended up doing the epigenetic study where we showed that we could start to repair trauma with MDMA-assisted therapy on the layer of the epigenetic code.
Wow. It's so cool. I mean, I've had Dr. Rabin Carhart-Harris on the podcast in the past. And
I love Rabin. He's a good friend and colleague.
Yeah, no, his work is so important, and he's such an incredible, spokesperson, as are you, for this field. And then I was fairly well versed in the work of Dr. Roland Griffiths,
yeah,
before he passed away. And it's all crucially like important. The idea that, of like a monotherapy in psychiatry is like it's like Bigfoot, right? But what this work is like showing is that like it's just a couple of, like, in the right set and setting with the right therapist, just a couple of experiences can radically shift somebody's mental health in such a profound way. Whereas like the standard of care is like, here, take this drug and be on it forever.
Well, it's chronic symptom management, right? It's basically saying, we don't know what to do for you, so just take this thing that numbs you to your feelings until we figure it out, right? Or until you figure it out. And traditionally, when SSRIs and most antidepressants were prescribed, the original way they were used was to stabilize somebody who was in crisis. And then they would be on it for 6 to 12 months. And then during that time, they would learn and start to master the therapy skills necessary, the cognitive skills, the behavioral techniques, at least a few of them where they started to feel like they had a grasp on what life changes they needed to make and what changes they need to make and how they like the story they tell themselves about themselves in the world, and starting to understand how to rewrite that. And then you taper off of the medicine slowly over time, and then they master more of the techniques, and then they start to be able to do it on their own. And so that's how many of us still practice. But when most SSRIs and antidepressants are prescribed by family medicine doctors and general practitioners, people who don't have advanced psychiatry training, nurse practitioners, PAs, and so they're not doing that kind of treatment. They're just trying to stabilize people and get them out of the office so they can see the next person. Right? It's not the kind of treatment that the evidence says is the way you're supposed to do it. Every psychiatric medication works better with therapy. It's not just psychedelics. We just don't teach it properly. But every single study shows when you combine talk therapy with the medicine, it works better. Then you get people off of the medicine. They don't have to take it for life. So psychedelics aren't unique there in that way.
Yeah. Is psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy the future, or is it the present? Like, are clinicians actually using it right now?
So ketamine is a legal psychedelic that we are currently using in practice to treat depression and PTSD in psychiatry. And it's used, there's one form of it called S-ketamine that is FDA approved for depression, and then there's regular old ketamine that we use for anesthesia, which is arguably slightly better than S-ketamine, but basically the same. And we use it for, we've been using that for 70 years for anesthesia, and then since early 2000s or late 90s in studies of depression and PTSD in mental health patients. And so that's legal now. The main issue is that probably 90% of ketamine that's available nationwide, which is, again, it's very safe. It is used in pregnant women and for surgical procedures and kids that don't tolerate anesthesia, general anesthesia. It's a very gentle medicine, and it only lasts an hour. So it's a great entry point. Also, it can be it can be used when people are taking SSRI antidepressants. Other psychedelics do not play well in the sandbox with other with SSRI antidepressants because they can cause serotonin syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ketamine doesn't have that problem. So it's a great entry point for people to right now start to get access to legal, safe, reliable psychedelic care. You just want to find a place you can do it with a therapist or have an expert therapist you're working with on the side, because the therapy is like 80% of the long-term great beneficial outcomes. And if you don't have the therapy, you're just going to keep getting ketamine and going back forever, just like every 2 weeks, just like with a normal antidepressant. That's not the goal. So we can actually, with a therapist, we can actually help you process the material underneath the surface that's stored from the past and feel safe enough to feel feelings that have needed to be felt for a really long time. And then when you feel safe enough to do that, you can rebuild, basically fix the broken bone of self-trust and learn to trust yourself again. And that's what Gabor Mate often talks about with kind of what's happening in the body. Is it's like having a broken bone that you just can't see, and the bone is self-trust, right? So through us having a trusting relationship, patient-client, we're a team, we're gonna do this together, you're gonna do the work, and I'm gonna be your guide, and we're gonna do this together. I'm here for you, right? That helps bridge the gap and create the traction on that bone that helps to heal self-trust. Then they model that feeling again for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so cool. Is this something that's available nationally, or are psychiatrists typically now being trained in this form of medicine?
So ketamine therapy still has not yet entered psychiatry training mainstream.
Okay.
You have to get training for it outside. I am one of those trainers. So if you're looking, you can come train with me. I do trainings around the country a few times a year, and then we have apprenticeships in our practice where people see patients with us. And that's at apollo.clinic, by the way, for anybody interested. But the idea being is that there's basically no trainings for this. And for some reason, despite the executive order and all these moves we're seeing in the executive branch of the federal government that are saying they want to prioritize moving cannabis and psychedelic medicines forward for severe mental illness, the medical education for psychedelics has actually dwindled. So even though there's many, many more studies that have come out over the last 10, 20 years showing how effective these are, and by how effective, I would argue, and I describe this in the book, that the role of psychedelics in mental health, if addressed properly, from what the evidence shows today, will be looked back on as effectively akin to the role of antibiotics to treat infection in the first half of the 20th century. It's that big of a discovery.
Wow. I was going to say like antibiotics for the soul.
Exactly. Yeah, you're helping the body, helping weaken the grip of trauma, just like antibiotics weaken the cell wall of a bacteria. That allows the body's natural self-defense response system to process it on its own and then excrete the waste and move on, right? And also, just like antibiotics, works within 1 to 12 weeks. Right. So you see like kind of that there's like certain themes and long lasting benefit if you do it right with the aftercare, right? Antibiotics for a wound requires aftercare. You can't, otherwise it gets reinfected, it comes back, right? But we just don't address emotional wounds and trauma wounds like that. So that's the indigenous knowledge, right? Like that's how Eastern medicine also thinks about emotional injury and mental illness. And they work through the body, through touch, which I think is one of the most fascinating things. I also talk about the meridian system, Tsubo and acupressure points, and there's reflexology from ancient Egypt. There's so much known about how the body works, and Western medicine just hasn't proven it or hasn't yet had the technology to prove it in double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled crossover studies. So we say, rather than innocent until proven guilty, we say you're wrong until proven right. That's not how science works. Science evolved through observation and then gradually working through trials. We didn't put antibiotics through double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled crossover trials. We just observed them working. And then we put them into practice and understood through very small case studies and small groups, because they didn't have those big advanced fancy trials at the time. We understood through first observation, then test, hypothesize, retest, test, retest, test, retest. Eventually, you've extended human life by 20 years. Right? You have discovered one of the greatest inventions of all time, because without the aid of double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled crossover studies, not to say we shouldn't do those sometimes, but we can't ignore common sense and the power and importance of observation, because that's how science starts.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, having somebody with your academic cred come along and be a cheerleader for this, I think is so crucially important because, I mean, there's also like the cliche of the hippies and the, LSD, uh, the flower child movement of the 60s and all that, probably led to psychic injury for a lot of people.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, a lot of shame and guilt around spirituality and like tree hugger, right? Like what a word.
Yeah.
Like we probably should hug trees more often, but we should at least like express gratitude for nature. We feel good when we're in it. We like it. It helps sustain us. It gives us fresh oxygen, right? There's nothing wrong with loving a tree, but then we create a word like tree hugger that demonizes or demeans people for loving nature, right? And Jeremy Narby talks about this in his book that I talk about here as well, because I think it's important to think about, and Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements, this idea of domestication, right? That we learn to see the world in a certain way from a very young age. And in our culture, we learn to see nature at odds with us, right? We don't see it as part of us or connected to us where we're in relationship with it as if it's conscious. We learn to interact with nature as an object, and we are the subjects for it that use or take from it, right? For our desires. That is a very different way of looking at the world, right? That's something that we are taught from a very, very young age that impacts the way that we choose to interact with a world and create a habitat that encourages us to thrive, not ideally with disease rates growing exponentially every year, right? Like there is a way to achieve, from what we know from science, a stabilization effectively of the age of abundance that we're in right now that allows us for continuous thriving that can spread across the world so that people can all actually have this incredible upgraded quality of life that we've been spending billions or trillions of dollars trying to discover how to do. We've done it. Like we just need to stabilize for a minute, take a breath, right? And just be like, okay, this is pretty good. Maybe like let's not add to the sauce. Yeah, let's taste it for a minute.
Taste it, yes. But I mean, humans have long had like an antagonistic relationship with nature, right? Like there is a tension there because, like, we weren't. We
were kicked out of the garden.
We were kicked out of the garden. Like gravity is something that never sat well with us, so we invented the airplane, right? Cancer is natural for all intents and purposes. There are natural compounds readily found in nature that can kill us. Like,
for sure.
We also have to be cautious with the appeal to nature fallacy. Like, not everything that's natural is good for us, and aging itself is natural, right? And along with aging comes decrepitude, and that can be obviously quite painful. So. Yeah, so I think like it's I can understand where this tension lies, where, on the one hand, yeah, like we've become so profoundly disconnected from nature, and there are real benefits to be gained from communing with nature. But on the other hand, like nature doesn't really care about the individual. Like nature cares about evolution, what have you. But yeah, so I think that's the right path forward is probably somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no such thing, generally speaking, as black and white.
Yeah.
Like, right, thinking about the normal distribution, like 90% of everything is somewhere in the gray. And to put it a slightly different way, what you described, because I think I love where this conversation is going. But what if nature doesn't so much care about evolution? It cares about harmony in a frequency way, like thinking about an orchestra. Like if we were to imagine that if we're all part of the same experience, right? We're all made of DNA. Everything that's alive in nature is made of DNA, right? We're all made of the same code, different expressions of the same code. We're also all made of atoms, including all the things that don't have DNA, that are not organic, like rocks and et cetera. We're all made of atoms, and those atoms are all made of subatomic particles that vibrate at certain frequencies. So when we are when we are harmonious, it's like an orchestra playing in tune, in time, and it sounds fucking incredible, right? It's like, that's why people pay to go to the orchestra. Like, it's magnificent, it's orgasmic, it's incredible. It can't be put into words. And when one of those instrumentalists is playing out of tune, or for instance, an entire violin section is out of tune or out of time, or an orchestra is warming up, it sounds horrible, and you kind of debate leaving and coming back later, right? And that's called dissonance. And that's what happens in nature when we are out of rhythm, and what happens in our bodies when we are out of rhythm. You notice it in particular when you're like trying to do work on something and there's like a jackhammer or construction sounds going on outside your house, or sirens going by. Those are designed to be dissonant so that they capture your attention. Not jackhammers, but that's a side effect. But you get the idea.
Yeah.
It creates a feeling of restlessness and unrest. And so what I kind of describe in the physics section of the book, which I think is really, physics has so much to share with us that I think is also, I was thought very poorly taught when I was learning about this stuff, is that I think I would argue that nature really cares about harmonious resonance with us. And that we see that when we do things that are resonant with it. And like when we go into nature and we do forest bathing, right, which is now like nationally encouraged by the government of Japan because it's so important for stress. It's so helpful measurably for stress management, that the body changes. The vagus nerve activity increases, heart rate decreases, heart rhythm slows down, heart rate variability increases, breath rate slows down, blood pressure decreases. The body expresses less inflammatory biomarkers, right? And so the gray area that you were talking about is really just starts with prioritizing our time experiencing nature, just being present with it, just like going out and just prioritizing time to connect with nature as if, from the perspective as if we are part of the same thing, right? That we are more the same than we are different. We are alive before we are anything else. And we're made of atoms, and we're made of all the same stardust. So like if we start out approaching nature by way of we are the same first, and then we start to notice the differences, then guess what happens in the brain in terms of what gets activated first?
What happens?
Your insula, the part that recognizes safety, gets activated before the amygdala. When you focus on difference first, difference is newness, novelty, unfamiliarity, uncertainty, evolutionary signals that fight or flight needs to kick on. That activates the amygdala first. That shuts down any openness for any kind of learning new things, communication, success, right? And then we have to backpedal that. So when we acknowledge sameness first, then all of a sudden we're starting out from a place of harmonic resonance with the environment around us. Difference is dissonance, right? Too much dissonance over time causes distress, which then eventually causes disease, right? These are all related terms to different extremes. And so we can start to understand through our interactions with nature and how it changes the body that we actually have a lot more control over this than we think if we start to think about the neuroscience of how we're activating safety first. Like safety first is like I know people think it's boring from school, but that's actually a really, really important, fundamentally backed phenomena going back to past Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But that's one key example of it, right? Like we know, we just ignore it because we don't teach it properly.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate because one thing that you argue is that safety is the foundation of performance.
Right. Yeah, because safety is what fuels recovery. And if you burn the candle at both ends, if you always strive for peak performance, and then you don't prioritize optimizing recovery and peak recovery, then your performance is going to plateau. And we see that all the time. I've experienced that in my own training as a collegiate and high school athlete. And I had to just figure it out. I'm like, oh, I need more sleep. I need more time, like resting my body. And then I would rest and I would come back and I would perform way better than I did. You probably had that too, right? And maybe not. But
well, I wasn't an athlete in high school. What did you play?
Volleyball and table tennis and tennis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So cool. No, I was not an athlete. I always like lifted weights for as long as I can. I've been a weightlifter for as long as I can remember, but I would hardly describe myself as an athlete. So for people that are like, stuck in the boardroom or in a stressful situation with their kids, or maybe they're going through a stressful time with regards to their health, and they can't just hit the eject button and frolic amid the fields and streams.
If only there was an eject button.
If only there was an eject button, right? What's the simplest intervention that somebody can implement right now to create a state change?
So the simplest thing that you can do is if you have somebody else with you that you're listening to this with, the simplest, fastest thing to do is just give each other a hug or hold hands. That is easily the fastest, easiest way to get back to safety immediately. The second fastest way is put on one of your favorite songs, right? Put on a song that is something you really like, that you have fond memories associated with. Then the third fastest way, and again, by fastest, these all take like 60 seconds, so they're all about the same, is to just take a slow, deep breath in through your nose or mouth and just fill your lungs by choice. You don't have to count. You don't have to think about anything else except the feeling of the air just coming into your nose or mouth, and just filling your lungs as much as you can, and then emptying them as much as you can. Slowly, not rapid, not shallow, just slow, deep breaths by choice. And the brain, elegant in its simplicity, has a feedback loop that says, if you just chose to take a breath right now, then the environment is no longer dictating your breathing rate, because that's what's happening before you choose to take a breath. We've just taken conscious control of the breathing process. So then you choose to take that breath, and within about 3 to 6 breath cycles, sometimes 9 to 12, so we're talking like 1 to 2 minutes from 80-90% of people, the heart rate starts to slow down. Vagus nerve activity starts to increase, because we've just reminded the body that it's safe enough to enter into a recovery state. And as soon as that happens, in just 1 to 2 minutes, we have just redirected a tremendous amount of the body's blood flow away from skeletal muscle, which was where most of the blood flow is going, like upwards of 80% in fight or flight and chronic stress from anything. Closing those vessels, because we are saying, hey, if I'm safe enough to take a deep breath, there can't be a lion around the corner right now, because otherwise, if it was an actual lion, the sympathetic nervous system amygdala would not allow us to focus on our breath.
Right.
We evolved hardwired that system. So when we take top-down control, we're just saying it, giving a gentle reminder, pat on the back, hug, right? Just being like, hey, we're safe. There's no lion. It's okay. You can come back. And the body's always in the present. And so vagus nerve activity goes up, heart rate slows down, HRV goes up as a measure of vagus nerve activity, and your thoughts start to slow down. And then you start to realize that time is much more subjectively experienced than we might think, through just feeling and noticing your breath. And that is where I argue is what Eastern and indigenous cultures have described as like true power, like accessing our true potential, because those techniques get us back into the moment immediately. Breath being one of the most important, because we're in control of it at any time. So it's, again, another part of that attention gym you can take with you wherever you go. It's just noticing when you're not attending to your breath and bring your attention back to your breath, no matter what you're doing. You can literally strengthen that muscle and body build that attention muscle anywhere you go by just doing that practice. We just don't teach it, right? We teach you have to sit. You do not have to sit to do that. You could do it anywhere. That's what monks and yogis teach about, and that's what they strive to do, is they breathe and notice their breath everywhere until they automate it. Another thing I talk about in the book is true multitasking is automation. It's not task switching like most of us do. Doing these practices trains neural networks to automate these experiences, like noticing your breath and mindfulness. When those muscles get automated, then we truly start to master multitasking, because we're running multiple streams of processing in the background, like data filtration and attention control, and all those things are just continuing to do their thing while we are locked in the present moment with whatever we're doing.
It is wild that your diaphragm is like it's under most normal circumstances under involuntary control, but you can take the reins at any time and consciously control your breath.
In any instant.
That is a wild. It's just like fascinating. It's like a self-driving car.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a full self-driving Tesla. It's like for 90%
Far more advanced.
Far more advanced. Yeah. Like 90% of the day it's doing what it's gonna do, but you can take the wheel at any time. It's just amazing that we have that capability.
Yeah, I mean, it's the human body is just freaking miracle. Like the more that I learn about the body and science, the more simply miraculous it is that we are alive and can do all the things that we do. I mean, it is just stunning. And I think one of the questions I get a lot as a physician and a researcher is, doesn't learning so much science make you bored about like religion and spirituality, or like disbelieve religion and spirituality? I'm like, no, it's actually completely the opposite, because the more I learn about the sheer elegance of how the body works so perfectly in us and all animals, right? And just the commonality in all these things. I mean, it's like spirituality becomes the most elegant expression of biology in its purest form. It's not like, we're actually starting to understand how spiritual phenomena can be, like through DMT, right? And psychedelics can be experienced under controlled circumstances by taking one drug that our brain makes. That's incredible, right? So like the connections are now there between, how we get back to, call it God or source or divinity, but it's there. And I would argue that the evidence now shows we know how to get there more often. So we need to update our education. We're still teaching people from like 50 years ago education. Like even in schools, like that needs to change. And screens need to leave the classroom, except for like maybe half hour a day. It's very bad for kids.
Do you think modern technology is ultimately, do you think it's a net positive? Do you think it's a net negative? Or do you think like anything else, it's a tool?
It's a tool. Yeah. I mean, like everything, it can be used for tremendous good, or it can be used for really silly, deleterious things. And I think right now we're in that phase, the latter, where we're asking technology to do things for us that are fundamentally human things to do, like therapy. Therapy is a human thing. Therapy requires this. It requires a mutual sense of our humanness, and you can't have that felt empathy or eye-to-eye contact or any of those things. Limbic resonance doesn't happen with a robot.
Doesn't happen with ChatGPT.
Definitely not. And the same with like learning how to talk to each other in relationships or teaching our kids, right? Like we are handing kids tablets in school and having the tablets teach kids or at home, rather than what we used to do when you and I were in school, which was you have a teacher, right? And like I had almost no computer contact in school. Did you?
Not until junior high school. High school, yeah.
Where you started to like use a computer for like maybe an hour a day.
Yeah.
Right, and it was like a really old school. If you were playing like helicopter game or whatever, like
it was the size of that Jasper air purifier over there.
Yeah, exactly. Right, like it was not a smartphone type of experience or a tablet that you take anywhere that has like lots of bright flashing lights and fast moving things and things that deliver information very quickly, immersed in blue light that stimulates your stress response system while the stuff you're trying to learn is being delivered to you.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't like something that could fit inside my pocket that I could reach for any moment of the day when just the slightest hint of boredom crept in.
Right, exactly. Which I think is more, I mean, we see that much more in adults, but in kids, it's like the learning on a screen without mentorship, right? Like our society in a lot of ways has forgotten about the importance of human-to-human mentorship. And that's how we pass down knowledge more effectively, because it's through lived experience and understanding. And machines are not going to do that. Like we can do some didactic training and use machines to accelerate that. But generally speaking, we still need people to be learning from other human beings. And that's why we're seeing Gen Z. I'm sure you probably saw this, but a Harvard professor testified for Congress that Gen Z is, from studies to date, the first generation in recorded history to score worse on standardized cognitive and math measures than the generation before.
Interesting.
Which is really bad. Like really, really bad. That's like the first signal of society in regression.
Wow.
Right? We're getting worse at reasoning and worse at like reading comprehension and math, but we're spending the same or more money to teach people how to do those things, which means that people are learning stuff in school that they are not able to actually remember well enough to pass a test well on it and then apply it in life, which is a huge waste. And it's going to be a huge problem when all of us need to be taken care of when we're older, right? That's when we really start to experience it. So
we're cooked.
I mean, if we don't do something about it, I think that's why this professor is testifying for Congress. I think this is an emergency for us as an education system. Like it's a public health problem, a massive public health problem. If we don't do anything about, it's going to be extraordinarily costly to society in the next 20, 30 years.
Wow. No, it's so interesting. Would you consider yourself Gen X? You're Gen Xer?
I'm the end of the millennials.
You are?
Or the oldest of the millennials.
An elder millennial?
Elder millennial, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. It's so interesting to me because I'm a millennial, but I was also among millennials. I mean, millennials, I would say as a whole, grew up with the internet for all intents and purposes.
In like high school or sometimes junior high.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I just turned 44 and I feel like I was, as soon as like the internet became something that like I could access, I was on it.
Yeah.
So I feel like for all intents and purposes, like my brain is wired into the internet. Like
Yeah.
I understand exponential growth. Like,
But you remember some things that other people don't remember,
yeah.
right? Like you remember having to go out and meet people in person
Yes.
to meet them, not to like Tinder them or
Yeah.
or whatever. So like meet them through online first and then go out. Like you know what it's like to talk to strangers. You know what it's like to, do you remember the Dewey Decimal System?
Yeah.
Right? Like most people don't remember that. That's how we used to have to find information.
Yeah.
That fucking sucked.
Well,
Thank God we're past the Dewey Decimal System.
yeah. But I think like what I get the sense that most people don't fully appreciate when these kinds of conversations occur is that the internet is not social media. Like they are distinct entities. Like
Yes.
I grew up with the internet.
Correct.
Right?
Same.
What I didn't necessarily grow up with was social media.
Right.
Social media came about when I was in college.
Yep.
And like it's great. Like I'm on it. I use it. It's I think like it's ultimately been a net positive in my life. But what I can't comprehend is the children who've grown up with social media, who've grown up not just wired into the internet, which I would consider myself having been since for as long as I can remember. But younger generations are now like growing up with their brains wired into this social comparison fabric, which to me seems like it would be really harmful.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see that, I think, very clearly that these platforms are generally speaking designed for engagement of young people, right? And we are also living in a loneliness epidemic, which makes this a little more unfortunate that we're in this situation because now there's a financial incentive to fill the loneliness gap for people who are not getting that filled through genuine, authentic human connection and are oftentimes isolated by technology or by their use of, it to interact online versus going out in person because they never learned how or never practiced. And then their social media is like becomes the way that you start to maintain and kind of like perform all your relationships, but it's not authentic for most people, right? Because when you post something online, you have an opportunity to edit that thing. Even if you don't edit it, there's still an opportunity to edit it before anybody else sees it. And so generally speaking, like most stuff that's online is an edited version of what, at least a little bit, of what it was in real life. But when you're meeting somebody in real life, you're getting the full unedited raw director's cut version, right? You're getting like the real deal.
The Zack Snyder cut, yeah.
Yeah. And that invokes trust. Trust is really important, like essential for healing and safety. If we don't remember, I was talking about trauma as being fractured self-trust. So if we don't have trust or we feel like we can't trust our environment because we're looking at edited or somewhat artificial representations of the world, or we don't know what's real or what's AI, then that also starts to trigger the amygdala and trigger the fear response, because we're like, oh, if I can't tell what's real or what's not real, there's more uncertainty in my environment, right? Uncertainty is one of those evolutionary triggers of fight or flight and the fear response. So that's also going to impair learning, impair empathy, digestion, immunity, reproduction, all the good stuff that we want to thrive and live a long, healthy life gets impaired by all of these different overwhelming inputs we don't think about. And then we don't learn the skills we need to learn to how to socialize properly because we're doing it digitally.
And it all comes back to safety.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, again, I think like there's few things I think would require like to rejigger our education, but like safety and the role, not just safety again as a thought, but safety as a neurobiological experience in the body, in the vagus nerve that we can measure, right? Like that's why heart rate variability, like you talk about, is so important. That's why Apollo was developed, because we needed more. HRV, heart rate variability, is our best biomarker ever for resilience, recovery, and performance, now longevity and health span, and your likelihood of getting sick or recovering if you get sick. And we have that now that you can measure through any wearable tracker pretty much. You can get a decent assessment over time of your physiological state of recovery and resilience to handle stressful situations with grace, right? Including aging with grace, right? Which is something we don't talk about that much. Aging is a thing that is going to happen. We can't stop it and we can't reverse it because it is the clock. It is the metronome of our body's orchestra. You can't stop it. You can slow it down. And you can reduce some of the toxic load of aging, which makes it feel like we're turning back the clock. But what we're really doing is just slowing it down and cleaning up the mess. And so it's how do we do these things with grace by building our distress tolerance, using tools like, if you're not going to do the breath work and you've tried the meditation, mindfulness is too hard, try Apollo for free on your iPhone, right? Just download an app, get on the same vibe as me and Max right now, and you can use it for free now. We made it for free on the iPhone for anyone to share.
That's right. Last time we hung out, you were telling me that you were developing a means to harness the iPhone's own vibrational capacity because Apollo is this external device, which is great. I'm actually wearing one right now, thanks to you. Thank you.
We've both got our vibes on.
Where can people learn more about it?
ApolloNeuro.com.
ApolloNeuro.com.
Or wearablehugs.com.
But it's also an app, and it harnesses the iPhone's own innate capability.
Yeah, so we developed Apollo to be basically a wearable form of music that, through my research at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, studying veterans with severe PTSD and safety, ways to activate the safety pathway in the body, we figured out how to compose sound waves, vibration, for the sense of touch that activate the touch receptors in a specific way that helps the body enter states of calm as if you were getting a hug or holding a pet or feeling ocean waves wash over you. Because those rhythms we know with music, like you've experienced, right? When you're having a bad day and one of your favorite songs comes on and you instantly feel better, right? That's a universal human experience. And it's the same from when you get a hug from somebody you trust on a bad day, you instantly feel better. There's a rhythm there between those things. There's a nervous system response that's happening. And it turns out to be the same pathway that MDMA activates. So from that research, we started in the lab at the university trying to compose vibrations that are songs, they're sound waves in the bass range, like what comes out of a subwoofer or a stand-up double bass, for the touch receptors that respond to soothing touch. And that activates vagus nerve activity, which improves calm around the clock. It helps you stay more energized and focused and clear and social and flow during the day. And then it winds you down and regulates your circadian rhythm for you at night and helps you fall asleep and stay asleep. And then when the clinical trials came back, we just had a very exciting one published 2 weeks ago from the wearable showing 46 more minutes on average sleep gain using Apollo for 3 hours in as little as one night in a study of over 900 Oura Ring users for 3 years. This is our big study I told you about last time we met. It just came out.
Amazing.
And improved REM sleep from using the wearable. And so we built an AI now that it's been training and in use by tens of thousands of people since 2023. that took the data from the over 400,000 nights of sleep we tracked in that Oura Ring study that just came out, and then tuned an AI to turn on Apollo automatically for you day and night to prevent wake-ups in the middle of the night before you wake up, like a snoo for adults, or if you know what that is. But
a snoo?
Yeah, it's like a breakthrough in baby crib technology that detects when babies are restless in the night and turns on to help them fall back asleep or not wake up. And so we just built that for adults.
That's amazing. Wow.
And sleep goes up by over 60 minutes a night, reliably, which is as much as Ambien. So in the Ambien range, with no drugs, just targeting the right nervous system pathways with technology, music in a new form.
In a new form.
Right? And that's resonance. That's creating that harmony with nature where our intention is to sleep. So we're going to send the stimulation to the body that reminds it of what sleep feels like. Then sleep becomes easier because you have a little help reminding the conductor, another metronome, just reminding the conductor to like conduct sleepy music now and not like crazy rage metal or dance music. Right? And so when those studies came back, long story short, we realized we had to release this and make this available for everyone because we're showing clinically in over 17 trials, improved sleep, focus, cognitive performance, physical recovery, fatigue, and a number of other things. Overall quality of life improved, burnout scores decreased. I mean, really significant results, and across over 2,000 people. And so we realized we had to make as much of this available for free to people as possible because it is actually helpful to people. It's proven to boost mood and reduce anxiety, right? We struggle with that with SSRIs, but now technology can do it in your pocket. So we spent 3 years hacking the iPhone, and we figured out, because they don't tell you how to do this, and we figured out how to deliver 6 and now more that are coming, but 6 vibes of Apollo. They're clinically proven vibration patterns that improve your health, that make you feel good, clinically proven, that you can now share for free on your iPhone. It's not the tool that's the problem. It's how we use it, right? This is a manifestation of neuroscience from our hearts to the world to help everyone feel a little bit better using the exact technologies in their own pocket and showing people that this is possible because nobody ever knew this was possible before. Now we can send good vibes.
So cool. Wow. And where can people learn more about it?
You can go to thehugvibe.com if you have an iPhone, and you can download the Apollo Neuro app on your iPhone and get it for free.
Wow. So cool. What's one thing that a chronically stressed person listening to this right now can do to feel more alive again?
I think the major, if you have an iPhone, download the app. I promise you, it will help nudge you in the right direction. But I think the main thing is to remember that you don't have to do anything to be human and to be worthy of love. Like, we as humans were born to just be. We don't have to do anything to be deserving of presence or calm or peace. That's actually our baseline state that we were here to participate in. It's the state that when we think about it and close our eyes for a moment and just take a few deep breaths, and closing your eyes when you take a few deep breaths always makes it a little bit better, and helps tune into your body. You start to realize that all of the information that we need about just how to be a human is already inside of us. Like, our bodies know. There's a certain level of intuitive knowledge that's in there. But there's so much chatter out here that we've been distracted from it for a very long time. So I think one of the concepts I talk about, I call them cognitive tools. It's the tools of understanding core topics about the human being that we aren't taught properly, like how the mind and the body are actually connected, right? And that when you're stressed, your heart rate goes up. And when you slow deep breathe, your stress comes down, right? Mind and body are connected. But that we have the ability to just sit back and witness our thoughts and not identify with them. And the world still goes on, right? We don't have to be doing something in every moment. Listening is a really important skill, just taking time to just enjoy stillness. And that's like the original human superpower of connecting back into nature, because in the present moment is all we have, right? The past, all anxiety for the most part, comes from focusing on the past or the future. The past has already happened and can't be changed. It no longer exists. It's in the past. The future hasn't yet happened and is uncertain. Uncertainty is one of the biggest triggers of anxiety, right? So where our attention is has altogether to do with how in control and safe we feel. That's why getting a hug and coming back into your body or taking a slow, deep breath reminds us that we are safe enough to just be in the moment and just allow things to happen. And every time you do that, you're training your neural networks to get stronger around allowing experience to go on and know that it's going to go on even when we're not always doing something about it. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Man, so cool. Well, Dr. David Rabin, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for sharing your work with us. Very excited. Beautiful book, A Simple Guide to Being Alive. I've got one last question for you, but before we get to that, where can people pick it up, and where can they connect with you on social media?
You can go to asimpleguidetobeingalive.com. Pretty straightforward, simpleguidetobeingalive.com. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be with you and to hang out. It's been too long. You can find me on social media. I always love to hear from everybody at Dr. David Rabin on Instagram and Twitter and wherever else you can find at Dr. David Rabin. TikTok.
All the places.
Yeah.
What does living a genius life mean to you?
Living a genius life to me means to live a life of curiosity. And when we forget that curiosity is how important that is, we miss out on like one of the most incredible parts of being human, which is discovery, right? Just like feeling safe and comfortable enough to ask questions, even if they might seem dumb, but just to see what happens, right? And just like discover stuff about ourselves and about the world. And to me, like that is what makes us geniuses. Together, we all have the capacity to access states of genius. It's really about how much are we learning to like tune in and listen to our bodies, and how in tune are we, and how willing are we to create the space that fosters curiosity and discovery. And that's when we start to enter the genius life.
Hey, I love it. Well, thank you for that. Thanks again for coming out, for sharing your insight, your wisdom with us. And thank you guys for listening. Sending you all a virtual hug. And love you all. I will catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.